A very good morning to you all, and a warm welcome to this ThinkForest webinar on China-Europe forest bioeconomy. My name is Rach Colling, and I'm Head of Communications at the European Forest Institute, and I'll be your facilitator and your guide for today's event. I see we've got approximately 50 attendees at the moment, so welcome to you all. Just to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and it will be made available later on our YouTube channel. If you are sharing information on social media, please feel free to use the ThinkForest hashtag, and you can see it here on the slide. Let's take a quick look at today's agenda so that you know what's coming up. We will start with an opening speech from our ThinkForest president, Janusz Potocznik, followed hopefully by our keynote speaker, Esko, who will give some reflections on China-Europe forest bioeconomy. He will be followed by Maarit, Kallio, who will present a new EFI report on this topic. And then we'll have a panel discussion to take a detailed look at the future of EU-China bioeconomy cooperation. And then Janusz has the difficult task of wrapping up the event with some conclusions at the end. You'll notice that throughout the event, there are opportunities for questions from our audience. So please do click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and then write your question there. And we would be really grateful if you can also include your name and your organization there as well, together with your question. During our panel discussion, there will be 2 languages available, English and Mandarin. So please make sure that you have selected the correct audio channel. You'll see the little interpretation button, a small globe icon at the bottom of your screen. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, ThinkForest President Janusz Potocznik. He is also co-chair of the International Resource Panel hosted by UNEP, chair of the Forum for the Future of Agriculture and RISE Foundation, and a member of the European Policy Centre's Advisory Council. Janusz has also served as European Commissioner for Science and Research and for the Environment. Janusz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rach. Dear friends, welcome to our webinar, exploring the opportunities of China-Europe cooperation related to forest bioeconomy, an area which certainly deserves proper attention from many points of view, and I'm quite certain we will address many of them during today's webinar. I will start with the obvious, not understood well by many, but essential for our future on the planet. For the first time in human history, we face the emergence of a single, tightly coupled human socio-ecological system of planetary scope. We are interconnected and interdependent more than ever, and our individual and collective responsibility has enormously increased. Today, it's obvious that a more joined-up response to the virus produces better answers and saves lives. Similarly, managing climate change and other environmental challenges across borders requires us to join forces, share more sovereignty, and cooperate. According to the UN International Resource Panel, in the midterm, except in specific cases, resource shortage will not be the core limiting factor of our economic development, but the environmental, climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and health consequences caused by excessive and irresponsible use of resources will be. Trade-offs among various SDGs are unavoidable, and sustainable consumption and production is the most efficient strategy to mitigate trade-offs and create synergies to resolve the development and environmental challenges articulated in the SDGs. Circular bioeconomy should be seen as an instrument to deliver the coupling of economic growth from resource use and environmental impacts, and as a part of the bigger picture of economic, social, and cultural transformation needed to deliver the SDGs. With the European Green Deal, European institutions charted a new development direction, and they showed that they do well understand the challenges we are facing. The new development strategy is acknowledging that environmental and economic goals are not in contradiction, that future economic development actually depends on how we will preserve and protect our natural capital. To quote, European Green Deal aims to transform the European Union into a fair and prosperous society with a modern, resource-efficient and competitive economy where there are no net emissions of greenhouse gases in 2050 and where economic growth is decoupled from resource use. The renewed climate target for 2030 of at least 55%, which will be discussed in a few days in European Council, is an essential ingredient in this transition to a more sustainable economy and society. It's operationalization of the European Green Deal ambition. It's a recognition of a clear scientific evidence, and its acknowledgement of already very visible effects of the climate change. In the last September, the UN General Assembly, China's President Xi Jinping announced that China will aim to peak emissions before 2030 and become carbon neutral by 2060. These are clear signs of aligned understanding of the challenge we face, setting European and Chinese ambition on a high level. This shared direction of travel, providing consistent policy signals, has increased the confidence and readiness for cooperation, but also increased responsibility of partners to deliver. In the first 5 years since the Paris Agreement, emissions have risen, and even in a severe COVID-driven economic contraction, they have barely changed the trajectory. The world is clearly currently not on track to avoid dangerous, irreversible climate change. But not everything is gloomy. The dynamics set since the Paris Agreement created the conditions for low carbon solutions and markets to progress dramatically over the last 5 years. Since Paris, progress in low carbon solutions and markets has been much faster than many realize. In 2015, zero carbon technologies and business models could rarely compete with incumbent carbon solutions. Today, they are already competitive. Building toward net zero economies create jobs in sectors like renewable energy, energy efficient buildings, local food economies, and land restoration, even in the context of the post-COVID recovery, outweighing the jobs displaced that will need transition support in sectors like the coal, oil and gas, and animal protein production. Countries, companies, and investors now have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to scale zero carbon industries in the next decade, and it is urgent. The circular bioeconomy potential in fighting climate change and other environmental and health consequences is important, as well as it's the opportunity for cooperation in this area between Europe and China. I'm sure many will talk about the importance and economic, trade, investment, or innovation potential of China and Europe, and also about facts relating to the size and impact of both, in particular China. So I will spare you repetitions. As Commissioner for Science and Research, and Esko was one of my special advisors, I have actually started the development of knowledge-based bioeconomy in Europe. And as Commissioner for Environment, I have also launched the circular economy idea in the European policy space. Both are evolving nicely. As you probably know, China and European Union have signed a memorandum of understanding on the circular economy at the 20th EU-China summit held in Beijing on 16-17 July 2018. This creates potentially good basis that in the future it would be extended also on bioeconomy related questions. While the concept of bioeconomy is already rather well accepted in the European institutions, Commission is currently intensively preparing the new forest strategy. Important questions are existing related to this area, which are sometimes still not getting attention they would deserve. But today, this will not be the case. The use of biomass resources is a very challenging topic, mainly from the point that the demand exceeds supply and the temptation to breach sustainability requirements is high. But it is also a very promising one, replacing some of the non-renewable resources with renewable, using the forest potential in a responsible and smart way. It's certainly an important option, contributing to the solutions needed. Both will be in our focus today, and both are offering an excellent opportunity for a fruitful debate based on the new FE report about China-Europe forest bioeconomy. Thank you for joining us, and I wish you a productive webinar. Back to you, Rach.
Thank you very much, Janusz. It's now time for me to introduce our first keynote speaker. And just to remind you that there will be time for a couple of questions afterwards, so please do write those into the Q&A box. As I mentioned earlier, our keynote speaker today is Esko, who will be giving us some reflections on Europe-China forest bioeconomy. Many of you will know him from his political career, as he served as Prime Minister of Finland from 1991 to 1995. He is currently chair of the board of Cinia and on the supervisory board of Sberbank. And he's also a member of the Europe, Middle East and Africa Advisory Council at JP Morgan. Mr. Aho has also been a president of the Finnish Innovation Fund Citra and was also executive vice president at the Nokia Corporation. So we are really looking forward to his broad perspective and political knowledge on this issue. Mr. Aho, welcome, and the floor is yours. Are you able to hear us, Mr. Aho?
I can hear you now, and probably, can you see me now?
No, we can't see you yet, but we can hear you now.
Okay, I have some challenges now with this video connection for some reasons. But anyway, maybe I will speak so that you have to only listen to me. I have wonderful picture from, I don't know if this is from China behind me, but unfortunately you cannot see it now. But I think I will try to. No, it says that it cannot start video for some reasons. Okay, but is it fine if I'm going to speak?
That's perfect, thank you.
Okay, all right. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this webinar. I don't need to say anything more about the importance of this topic. Mr. Potocnik was telling everything about that. So the issue is not only relevant, but it's critical as well, both for Europe and China as well. I have been in the leadership role in different kind of institutions, both public and private, and always when trained for leadership, I have been asked to look back and avoid mistakes and look for the future, creating fantastic visions to be followed. When looking back, my own experience, I think maybe we have to turn everything around, to look back in order to learn from success stories, to repeat, or at least to try to repeat some success stories. And as far as the future is concerned, maybe it's better to concentrate, to be prepared for the worst. Especially this COVID-19 case has shown how important it is to take seriously even the worst case scenarios. Anyway, when looking back, what is like a model for us when thinking about circular bioeconomy and collaboration between Europe and China, or the European Union and China? Do we have any good cases, success stories to be utilized in this case? I think we do have. If you look back 1990s when mobile technology emerged and fantastic new technologies, applications were taken into the use, actually Europe was having very strong position in the global market, partly thanks to China, because Europe and China, European companies and Chinese companies were growing together. we were able to take benefit from that collaboration. And I think in similar way, we can do, or we can repeat that experience in the field of bioeconomy as well. Potential is there, needs to do something are there. The question is how to create right kind of ecosystem to get things to be done. When looking back, mobile technologies, it was an ecosystem game, and in the same way, bioeconomy is going to be an ecosystem game. It's not enough that you have certain critical elements there. Everything has to be designed according to common principles. And when looking at ecosystem components, I think China and Europe can learn from each other, but in the same time, we can also make a lot of common efforts which will be complementary. I can identify at least 4 or 5 areas where that kind of interest, common interest, is obvious and critical. For the first, R&D. I think it's a fact that until now, bioeconomy has not been able to attract enough R&D funding and R&D resources. If you compare bio with digital technologies, you can see fundamental difference. And now we can see that time is ripe to get more funding, more resources for R&D. And in that area, division of labor and collaboration is critical. I think we have good reasons to coordinate European and Chinese efforts in the field of R&D in bioeconomy. Secondly, skills and talents. We have to create common knowledge base for bioeconomy, circular bioeconomy. And unfortunately, until now, we have siloed educational systems. We have to integrate educational efforts in a way that we have master's programs for bioeconomy. And I think we should do these programs together with other countries. Again, Europe and China can and should collaborate. For the third, risk-taking capacity. You cannot imagine digital revolution without venture capital investments. Investments which are based on the idea that risk is high and return of investment is high as well, if successful. And China has huge resources, Europe as well. And I think we should be able to coordinate our efforts in the field of bioeconomy to get more risk-taking capacity in this area, because there is no innovation without risk-taking capacity. And you have to make a distinction between inventions and innovations. I think especially in these circumstances, we need a lot of innovations in the field of bioeconomy. And for the fourth, joint efforts in the field of regulation. Regulatory environment is a critical part of ecosystem. If you look back, mobile technologies, one of the assets in Europe was the fact that we had common understanding how to regulate this market. And I think we have good reasons, again, to coordinate our efforts to create global standards, or at least European standards, which can be applied together with China as well. And finally, everything is about consumers. Consumers are kings. Circular bioeconomy is not going to be a reality without having strong commitment from consumers. And in order to get that, we have to have access to the markets. Just like we created access to the markets in mobile technologies. Access to the markets led to scaling up. We were able to create rapidly mass markets for mobile devices. Now we need mass markets for new products, solutions in the bioeconomy. And that requires access to the markets. And Europe and China, the European Union and China, should be able to have deals made which will create as broad market as possible. because commoditization of ideas, commoditization of inventions and innovations is the critical thing. And that can happen only when the borders are open and there is a common market available. These are my comments. I'm so sorry that you cannot see my face and fantastic picture behind me, but this is one of the weaknesses of the present technology still. But anyway, I very much appreciate the idea to create organized efforts in this area. Europe and China are big players in the bioeconomy, circular bioeconomy, and we have time to take concrete efforts just now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aho. I think we have time for a couple of questions if anybody wishes to pose one. I perhaps have one for you myself. You mentioned various criteria for the development of a bioeconomy ecosystem, but I also wanted to ask about the political side. I understand that as Prime Minister of Finland, you met the Chinese leadership in Beijing in 1994. And at that time, and I guess still now today, the Chinese Communist Party is really central for developing economic and other cooperation with the EU. So it's a country in which high-level political meetings are really key to advancing economic cooperation. But how do you see that we could get the subject of forest bioeconomy cooperation on the table in these sorts of high-level meetings? Because so far it doesn't seem to have been on the agenda.
Actually, it has been on the agenda. So for example, when the leaders of the European Union and China have met, bioeconomy has been on the agenda. But the fact is that China is not yet where Europeans are. The fact is that awareness of bioeconomy and circular bioeconomy is not that good yet in China. But China is coming, and we have seen that they have set rather ambitious targets for sustainability. And when doing so, you have to use bioeconomy as a tool to get things to be done. So I'm quite confident that there is potential, but it's very important that here in Europe we have also clear understanding. What do we mean when we speak about bioeconomy? I think we have still a lot of work to be done in order to get the understanding that forestry, when organized well in a sustainable way, is not a risk for the environment, but it is the asset we urgently need in order to move to low carbon economy or zero carbon economy in the future. Without forestry, without use of forest resources, you cannot do that. There is no alternative. And I think this is something we have to do at home as well before entering the same tables with the Chinese. We have to get clear understanding here in Europe, and also to understand that Europe's resource base is extraordinary. So we have knowledge, we have industrial capacities, we have skills and talents, but we have also forest resources which are growing very fast. Since the beginning of 1990s, our raw material base has increased more than 1/3 in Europe. And I think most of Europeans do not understand that and know that. So I think it's not only a question of asking Chinese to follow us and to be on the same level, but we have to improve our performance as well. That's the way how we can get political commitments as well.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Mr. Aho. I think some of those issues that you are talking about will now be touched on by our next speaker, in fact, particularly, which is Maarit Kallio, who will be talking about the new EFI study, which is published, in fact, today, which provides an assessment and an outlook for the future of the China-Europe forest bioeconomy. Maarit is a professor of forest policy and economics at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences. She's also the coordinator of the Forest Sector Analysis Unit at UFRO, the International Union of Forest Research Organizations. Maarit, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rach. It's an honor for me to present our study in this ThinkForest seminar. I will share my screen now and open my presentation. You can see it? Okay. Yes. Why did we examine China, European Union, forest bioeconomy? Actually, the previous speakers talked about that. Both EU and China have set targets to be carbon neutral by in some next 30, 40 years. And it is very hard to see how this could be achieved without the circular forest bioeconomy being part of that solution. Both China and European Union have vast and growing forest resources, and they could provide a good basis for developing sustainable circular forest bioeconomy further. Doing bioeconomic cooperation, trade, investment, and research and development together would not only support the global sustainability goals, but also provide economic opportunities for people, both in rural and urban regions. This new AFI study we published today is assessing the China and the EU bioeconomy in its current state, in the context of strategies and policies, general economy, investments, and trade. We also provide an outlook for 2030. And as this is from Science to Policy report, we of course conclude the opportunities and policy measures needed to benefit of these opportunities. This report was the go-work of 13 scientists, and we had a team where about half of the scientists came from China and half from Europe and US. So this is was quite unique in that way also, this study. This graph shows the forest resource development in China and the European Union in terms of growing stock and forest area. You can see that China has made impressive investments into its increase of its forest coverage and forest plantations. The amount of forested land has increased by more than 80 million hectares in the last 3 decades. It equals to the common forest area in Spain, Sweden, and Finland together, so it's impressive. Also, European Union has increased its forest area, but more moderately. But interestingly, the growing stock has increased in the European Union as much as in China in the last 2 decades. The use of forests has been much less than the growth, and also the forest management is part of the reason, of course. And so the stocking level, the cubic meters per hectare in China are still below the global average, but there are lots of opportunities to improve that, and China is also motivated to do that because of it's very much relying on imported wood at the moment. Here, indeed, you see the situation of Chinese net imports of some forest products in 2017. In 2019, actually, it's also here, China imported more than 60 million cubic meters of wood, according to the FAO statistics. But yes, China is importing roundwood, sawnwood, and also pulp. But in the finished and semi-finished other forest products, China has become self-sufficient in this century. These blue parts of the bars show the European part of this net imports or net export of China. You see that the European share is quite modest. In 2017, the export value from European Union to China was about 5 billion euros. When it comes to the markets of forest-based products and services, the traditional forest industry product markets have been quite mature in Europe for some time already, and sometimes even in some cases declining. In China, they are still strongly growing in many segments, except the printing and writing papers. There are sources also for additional business opportunities. New and emerging products and services, they are important in forest bioeconomy development. And also there's this substitution of steel, concrete, cotton, and oil-based products like polyester and plastics that provide market opportunities for forest-based sector. These substitution opportunities are often, but not only policy driven, also consumers play a role there. Of course, the European could increase its exports if it's cost competitive in the export markets. China has this shortage of wood biomass, so it might be more focused to serve the domestic market in the future. But in the end, we have to stress that using more biomass or any resources is not a goal, but of course, in the bioeconomy, we want to use these resources smarter. Then something about the investments. Chinese companies have shown interest and been investing also in biomass, pulp, and biofuels production abroad, also in European Union. But European forest industry enterprises are still more present in China than vice versa, which is quite natural because the European forest industry and forest sector market have not been very attractive in the beginning of this century when China's market was growing strongly. Yet, must be said that China is regarded to be a very challenging country for foreign investors. EU and China have been since 2013 negotiated to get an investment agreement between the two, but it's still lacking, and this kind of agreement would be badly needed to develop also forest bioeconomy. There are many policies that affect the forest bioeconomy development. We review them in the study. Here I picked just some examples. Of course, the climate mitigation goals and strive for climate neutrality is one of the big factors behind the development. Then there are several forest-related policy. China is really much striving for to improve the ecological and social functions of forest, and it has set almost 80% of the stock to these purposes only by the different bans of logging from natural forests. You cannot log natural forest in China now. And China is also aiming to increase further its plantation area and wood supply. In Europe, for instance, we had these new reference levels for forest carbon sink that might affect the forest management in this coming decade. And both regions are aiming to combat the use of wood coming from illegal origins. Then there are, of course, policies that aid to shift some smarter use of wood-based materials. China has several policies that support green construction. European Union, with its new waste legislations, tries to increase the collection of textile, wood, paper, and packaging so that they would not so much would be going to waste. And both countries have policies that ban use of plastics in some applications in the next few years. China is the world's leading market for green bonds, and there are several agreements for financing green investments in China. I have here two storylines that tell about some case examples of the mutually beneficial forest bioeconomy cooperation that could be done between China and the EU. The first is the green construction materials case. China is the biggest construction market in the world, and urbanization and economic growth means that there will be high and increasing demand for construction materials also in the future, particularly those materials that are suitable for prefabrication. But yet China is striving for climate neutrality, and here construction sector is a big greenhouse gas emitter. To deal with that, China has several policies that support green construction, and wood-based materials is a good option there. But China has this severe shortage of suitable logs in China. But here, European producers could have market opportunities, but in order to develop them and in order to advance wood-based construction in China, there would be need for research and development cooperation to have such products in the markets that would be suitable for Chinese markets. And also, when it comes to the EU producers, they are often small or medium scale size. They don't have resources to explore the market opportunities in China, so they would need support in that, even in that, I think. And finally, to make these opportunities that are there to realize, we also need removal of many of the barriers for investing in between China and the European Union. The other case example of mine is about the textile materials. China, again, is the big operator here. It's the biggest processor of textile fibers globally. And the global economic growth makes the demand for textiles bigger, and also in China it's increasing. But there are environmental problems with cotton and polyester production and use. And again, wood-based fibers would be a good option here. And it's already used in some 7% of the textile is coming from these materials. And China is now importing the wood and pulp that is being used for these wood-based textile materials in China. If it remains to be so, if there would be investments in more dissolving pulp or other type of this kind of pulp production in China, we don't know. We would need a better forecast of the forest resource development in China. There could be market opportunities for EU producers here. But on the other hand, we must remember that textile consumption is unsustainable, and there should be also policies and measures to influence consumers to behave more responsibly here. EU's new waste legislation might help in this, or at least it helps to recycle the textile materials. And there will be certainly innovations and know-how and collection know-how accumulating it could be accumulating on collection, reuse, and manufacturing of the materials. But this will need also research and development, and EU and China could cooperate in this knowledge sharing and research and development in this area. But there are more cases, of course, not just textile materials, but or wood construction materials, but these are just two storylines here. Then we have some policy implication. I have collected here three main titles. Biomass resources are limited, and then China and European Union should and could cooperate to increase the quantity and quality of the biomass resources. There are, especially to get better joint production of economic, social, and environmental goods and services from forests. And also cooperation of using the existing resources more smartly. There are lots of fields to do research and development and cooperation together. China's climate goals and environmental policies provide business opportunities also for the European Union-based industries. But to seize these opportunities, the EU industries need support in form of information and help in financing and market access. And they also need a stable policy environment to make them trust that there will be reliable supply and acceptance of using forest biomass. And certainly this mutual investment agreement between European Union and China would be crucial to get. Finally, we need better statistics and sound information on forests, forest-based sector, and also the sectors to which forest bioeconomy is compared to. The statistical data, what we get, for instance, to Faustat from China is very unreliable, but that's an example. But also, of course, European Union has job to do in these fronts. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for those insights, Maarit. I think we now have time for a couple of questions, and there are quite a lot in the Q&A box at the moment. Some of them I think we'll keep for the panel discussion later on, as I think they'll be interesting to all our panelists there. Maybe just to start with one question from James Hewitt, who asks, although China prohibits commercial logging in its own forests, it's known as an importer of illegal, unsustainably produced timber. So how does the bioeconomy fit China other than by monoculture wood farms or plantations? I think this is something you touched on in your presentation.
I think these wood plantations, they anyhow protect the logging. You don't need to log these natural forests, which have the biodiversity value and other values. So it's good to have these plantations, and there can be even more plantations. You cannot require the plantations to have the same biodiversity qualities than the natural forest have. But yes, this is actually where for instance, the legal sustainable wood and wood products coming from the European Union would be part of the solution, so that this illegal wood coming from areas where this deforestation and illegal logging are a problem can be avoided.
Thank you. And another quick question for you. You didn't really mention bioenergy policies or biofuels in your presentation at all. How do you see their role also in this context?
Yes, indeed, they are an important role in both in Chinese and European energy and climate policies. and we discussed them in our study. But certainly burning wood in its any form is not the first option for using the wood biomass, but it would be the side streams and waste wood that would be best fitting for bioenergy. But it's doubtful how much of that would be available. And even doing a little share of, for instance, in biofuel, traffic biofuel production or consumption in Europe from wood biomass would require huge amounts of biomass. And we thought that it would not be something that would so much be exported, for instance, from Europe to China. And China is also making its own biofuels, currently mostly from agricultural crops. But also there could be this synthetic biofuels that could be a game changer. Not biofuels, synthetic fuels that could be a game changer in the energy market.
Thank you. I'm sure that's something we'll come back to during the panel discussion also. But thank you to Maarit. Thank you for your presentation. I think it's now time that we move on to our panel discussion, which is going to dive into the topic of the future of China-Europe bioeconomy cooperation. Just a reminder that this discussion will be available in either English or in Mandarin, so please ensure that you've got the correct channel selected, and you'll find the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. It's my pleasure now to introduce our panel moderator, Kerry Brown. Kerry is Professor of Chinese Studies and Director of the Lao China Institute at King's College London. He's also an associate of the Asia Pacific Programme at Chatham House and author of almost 20 books on modern Chinese politics. So I'll hand over to you now, Kerry, to introduce your discussion and your panelists.
Great, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here today. And I'm very grateful for the organisers for this important panel on the future of China-EU bioeconomic cooperation to invite me. We have, I think, 4 speakers today. Maarit, the professor at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences. Christine Lang, the co-chair of the International Advisory Council on Global Bioeconomy. We have Zhao, the executive vice president of China Association of Circular Economy. And I believe Xiaoqian, Chen, the associate professor at the Beijing Forestry University School of Economics and Management and senior expert European Forest Institute. I believe that she is standing in for another speaker. So very grateful for her doing that. What we will do is to have everyone make initial statements, I think of from 5 to 6 minutes. And then in the order which I just read people out, and then we'll have time for discussion. If people could put any questions that they want in the discussion function, that would be great. But if I could now invite Maarit, the professor of the Norwegian University of Life Sciences, I think that she is here. Yes, if I could invite you to speak for 5 to 6 minutes.
Actually, I was told, thanks, Kerry. Actually, I was told by that I would not, I'm not expected to give this presentation because I gave already mine. So
you have nothing. Okay, well maybe
yeah, I didn't prepare any. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, then if I can invite Christine Lang, the co-chair of the International Advisory Council on Global Bioeconomy. Yeah, Christine. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for having me in this very interesting conference, and thanks, Kerry, for introducing me. So as you see, I'm more on the international advisory board, and my background is I'm entrepreneur and microbiologist, but nevertheless, I think the forest bioeconomy is an important part of global bioeconomy. And I have a few statements for you this morning. First of all, I would like to say that over the last for a few couple of years, bioeconomy has indeed become something that is a kind of a global movement, and no longer something that is in a niche with the experts area and talking on this. And also bioeconomy has indeed shown that it can significantly contribute to the major goals like climate action and health and well-being. And when I say this, I mean, just to mention health and well-being, you've seen over the last couple of months how important bio-innovations have proved to be to answer to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that's just an example how bioeconomy, bio-innovation and biotechnology can contribute also to other areas. And that is also part that health is also something, not health of humans, but also health of the ecosystem that goes into this. Second, science and technology is something that we really should embrace as a very important part of bioeconomy, novel manufacturing processes, valuable materials. And we just heard that energy does not count on that, but really bringing bio-based material into valuable materials and products. And that also, of course, applies to the use of woods. And that has proved to solve really critical situations. Climate action, I already mentioned, that is also something that bioeconomy will contribute further to. That is not just land management as forests, but also restoring biodiversity and other parts of that. And having said that, I would say that there is an opportunity for bioeconomy, but also an urgency to use bioeconomy for solving major crises and major problems. There are some key aspects that are especially important also for international collaboration. And I think, first of all, these key aspects is we should work on strengthening science, technology, and also education. And I heard a similar thing just when Esko gave his speech in the beginning. And that also resonates with me, because I mean, what we need is innovation. We need science funding, and we have to invest into training. And that also goes into exchange with capacity building in both EU and China, I guess. On the other hand, also something very important is we have to look at stakeholders. And I think it's both, on the one hand, it's industry and businesses. But what turns out to become very important now is that we should look at consumers and the consumer side. So it's on the one hand, we have to see that innovative startups and other businesses are promoted. We also have to look at trends in society that ask for bio-based products, that ask for sustainable produced products. And I think it's time now to use these trends and go on with bioeconomy. And that there's also another trend that I see, that we need to come together like today, but even more with more open global platforms that really get together all people interested in working on bioeconomy and put their voices together. So we will have one global platform that really is there to answer things. And the last thing, and it might be that is the most important, so put it at the end, is I'd like to point out that I've seen, or that we've seen, one important measure, and it is interesting that it's one key measure that has proved very successful for bioeconomy development throughout the last years. And this one measure is having a plan. I mean, having a strategy is the right word, of course. If you have a bioeconomy strategy, and we see it around the world, then there is a guideline, there are roadmaps, there are strategies, and that is the basis for success, I think. And we see this not just for basis of long-term goals, investment, for example, foster communication. We can see education as policy measure, and we need this all to get there. Two examples, or just let's say, because you have time, one example: the European Green Deal and the European Bioeconomy strategy. They have proven extremely successful, and Jan pointed also to that is a long-term thing. But what you really can see also with the Green Deal today, there are a few goals that are really overarching, like food first, then sustainability, limit climate change, create jobs, and an action plan that goes into mobilizing investment, mobilizing regional activities, operate within safe ecological measures. And I think this is, bioeconomy is also important part of the European Green Deal. And if we look at that and then translate it to international cooperation, I think we should ask everyone to focus also on that. And I know that China, and that should be my last point on that, China has had a bioindustry strategy and roadmap, but that was only going into 2020. And so my question also to the other discussants and also to the general public is, how can we help to get this prolonged? Because having a strategy, having a plan, having a roadmap is something that really aligns policy and other stakeholder investments. And this is really helpful for building a sustainable and resilient bioeconomy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's greatly appreciated. Important points about European and Chinese cooperation. So we'll come back to those. And now for a Chinese perspective, I'd like to invite Zhao Kai, the Executive Vice President of the Chinese Association of Circular Economy. A great discussion recently in China about what it means, the circular economy. So it'd be good to have Mr. Zhao Kai's perspectives on this. So if I could invite Mr. Zhao Kai to make his comments. Thank you.
感谢欧洲森林研究所，因为我是受咱们中国驻欧盟代表团的这个推荐参加咱们这个线上的讨论会，这个非常高兴，也是利用这个机会，能够来分享这个循环经济在整个经济发展当中的一个重要的作用，以及对中国的经济发展以及中欧双边的经济合作起到了一个什么作用。我很高兴来分享我的一些体会。那么谈到这个循环经济呢，大家也都知道这个词，我们在中国这边谈呢，主要还是最早是借鉴了这个国外的这个3R 原则，是reduce、reuse、recycle 那么在中国这边呢，我们又把这个循环经济这项工作呢，又结合中国的相关的这个实际需求把它进行了一个中国化的这个推进现在目前看来呢，是也取得了一个非常好的一个成就，在过去的10几年当中。那么现在随着这个经济的发展以及社会这个变革，目前呢，发展循环经济呢已经成为了这个全球的共识不光是中国在推进循环经济的这项工作，实际上欧盟也在推进包括其他国家。那么据我所知呢，大家都认为这个循环经济是经济发展到现阶段的一个最主要的一个新的动能。也就是说，我们经济发展到一定程度，它面临的是一些环境压力、一些资源压力一些气候压力等等等等这些压力呢，这些挑战促使我们要深入的去思考我们今后的发展途径是什么。那么循环经济呢，就是一个最有效的一个途径。正如中国的国家主席习近平主席在前不久这个阐述了中国对于这个碳减排的一个目标跟愿景，也就是说要实现中国2030年 这个碳达峰以及2060年这个碳中和这个目标呢，那最有效的途径也是要大力发展循环经济。这个呢，这是我们这个循环经济在中国已经提到了国家的一个非常高的一个战略的一个地位。那么在中国这边呢，我们又在过去的10几年基础上，我们下一步呢，也要对中国的循环经济的发展呢，是要更深入的去推进。你比方说这个针对这个工业的，针对农业的，针对园区的以及对公众这个绿色消费的等等这些方面呢，我们都要采取一系列的这个计划。现在看这个循环经济已经成为了这个中国实现这个资源永续利用的一个强有力的手段，也是中国这个作为它资源这个战略的一个是非常重要的一个补充另外呢，就是对于这个气候变化这个循环经济呢也发挥了一个重要的作用我们之前也了解到，就是循环经济对于这个碳减排或者是我们所说的温室气体这个减排这个贡献率，欧洲呢可能占比比较大欧洲呢就有的这个机构这个数据呢说欧洲已经贡献50%到60%，那么中国可能没有这么大，但是数量也是非常惊人我们还没有做详细的这种研究，但是呢，初步的一个分析呢，20-30%，就20-30%的这种贡献还是有的。所以呢，像这样的一个工作呢，我们觉得那就是应该去强有力的来。
We also noticed then it's also important for China to address the issue above mentioned. I think China and the Europe Union are the two big economies globally should cooperate together to address the issue. Circular bioeconomy is a very promising area for the both sides to cooperate. My association has assisted the relevant ministry in China to engage the cooperation discussion with the Europe side. For example, my association also as part of the player to work with other players here to follow up the MOU signed between China and the European Union on the circular bioeconomy. For example, we see the cooperation area already be discussed by both sides. For example, on the policy cooperation and also the best practice sharing. And also we are looking forward to hear more and learn more from Europe side in terms of the clean production technology, and also, for example, how to best use the ecological label to promote the clean products in the market, and also to better manage the waste, and also to how to best manage the plastic issues. I felt above mentioned areas are the interesting cooperation areas for the both sides. Since MOU was signed between China and Europe in 2018, the MOU of the circular economy cooperation between China and Europe becomes the priority, one of the priority area in the EU-China summit discussion. And my association also responds to develop the certain
comments from the industry aspects. Myself also led a delegation, visited the EU Commission in Brussels to discuss how to promote the industry cooperation, to highlighting the cooperation in bioeconomy areas. For example, we think the further cooperation on to address the plastic issue is one interesting area. I noticed dealing with the plastic pollution is one of the priority for EU, and there are a lot of the regulations and the practice already made. From China's side, we are interested about all the activities and the technologies in that regard in Europe, and we do looking forward to learn the mature technology and the best business model, business practice in Europe, and can learn those things, introduce them to the business sector here in China. And I think the industry cooperation is very important in terms of the cooperation on the circular economy topic. My association now talking with my peers in Europe to try and set up a platform to booming the discussion between the industry members here or with their peers in Europe to identify the mutual interests and set up the cooperation opportunities. Besides talking to European as a whole target, I think it's also important for China to also have the bilateral discussion with the member countries in Europe. The different Europe member countries have the different advantages, and it's important also to process the bilateral cooperation. For example, I can give some examples. The Veolia company in France, who very be good at the wastewater pollution control. The company had a very good business here in China too. And this French company also introduced a lot of the advanced wastewater control technologies into China. We see this technology borrow model is an interesting way to booming the cooperation. My association provided a lot of this kind of the international cooperation between my association's member company with their peers in Europe. This is just one example. Another example was a German company who very be good at also the plastic related technology. So we set up the business cooperation between this German company and the Chinese company here, and localized their business model here, and engage more the Chinese companies to able to learn from their peers in Europe in terms of the advanced technology and also the good business model. For me, even though those examples as an individual cooperation between companies, but they provide the valuable foundation also for the China and Europe to talk about the national level cooperation in terms of the policy coordination and the strategy coordination. One additional thing I want to mention was according to China's the Belt and Road Initiative, we are now currently emphasize greening the Belt Road Initiative. And we think circular bioeconomy, the principles business model of circular economy, could also be promoted by China when China do the Belt Road Initiative through the cooperation with countries along the Belt and Road. For me, the circular bioeconomy issue eventually is about how to balancing the relation between the people and the nature. For China, we do want to go ahead to have a business model which we can use to harmonize the nature and the people's development. And we do think the circular economy can be an essential part of China's national strategy of ecological civilization. And by adopt the guidance principles of circular economy, we can better serve the one planet.
Thank you very much to Mr. Zhao. Thank you for that overview of Chinese or some Chinese perspectives on this area of bioeconomic cooperation. And now I would like to invite the final speaker for this panel, Xiaoqian Chen, who is Associate Professor at the Beijing Forestry University School of Economics and Management and the Senior Expert at the European Forest Institute. So, Professor Chen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. It's my pleasure to be here. I think it's it could be very. But 我已经开了呀。Yeah, I opened already. How about now? How about now?
Need some technical help. If the IT people can help.
I unmute myself already.
We can hear her from the English channel.
Oh, okay, great.
Can you please check if you're in the English channel, Kerry?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can continue, right? Great. So thank you, Chair. I think this is not easy question to really identify the most important factors in the EU-China bioeconomic cooperation. But I do think the new research, the EFI leaded, which Professor Maarit already explained before, set some interesting setting there. So from my perspective, I think the following factors are deserved to be thinking about if we really would like to promote the bioeconomy cooperation between China and Europe, especially in the forest sector. First of all, I think the political relation is an important factor. Though we see the very friendly EU and China strategic partner cooperation already lasted for about 15 years. However, we also have to recognize we are now in a changing landscape globally. The different political powers did have their own interests. So how to build up a mutual trust cooperation model between China and Europe, I think is very important and is an important foundation for the future China-EU bioeconomy cooperation. Because we see on the one hand, both sides only can maximum the benefit by cooperation. But on the other side, we also recognize there are also the competitive relations in certain area. So how to handling this strategic cooperation relation and also the competitor relation would be an interesting topic to look into. And we do feel that if both sides could able to set up a stable and mutual trust political relation, it will really provide a solid foundation for the future EU-China bioeconomy cooperation, especially also because bioeconomy is a new tools supposed to be used to address the challenges of the climate change and sustainable development. And for China, those issues was still in the learning process, even though China had a lot of the strategy and the tools to address those two issues. However, we have to see China still new, and we want to learn. But in the learning process, of course, there will be also conflict and also not always a happy story. So I think the political relation is a very important factor for the future. The second thing I want to mention is policy. I think the policy in terms of the addressing the climate change and also the sustainable development goals are the two major themes will bring the impacts for the future EU-China bioeconomy cooperation. I think those two are pretty crucial because if you look at past 10 years, China have the intensive policy come out in terms to drive the climate change and to pushing the sustainable development as a whole nation. And also for the upcoming 14 5-year plan, which will be started from next year, we heard that the green, the low carbon are also the hot and the priority area for the next 5-year plan. So I do think how the policy in China would able to better create a market and necessary incentive, and also even the financial incentive to promote the circular bioeconomy would be very crucial for the whole EU-China cooperation in this regard. Of course, we also recognize for the Europe, there are also policy newly issued, include the Green Deal and other things. So that's why I think policy is very important factor, and the policy dialogue, policy exchange, policy coordination really necessary for the both sides in order to better booming the circular bioeconomy development in the future. The third factor I would like to mention was really economic factors. This is a big one, but I want to, oh, sorry, I forgot one for the policy one. The policy one, I also want to mention the regional policies. And you see, China was really trying to expanding the regional influence, include the newly signed RCEP trade agreement with 16 countries, which created the largest free trade zone now in the world. It also part of China's regional policy, and now that that regional cooperation and also global cooperation, China will emphasize its leading role aggressively. It also then give the opportunity to the EU-China cooperation by introduce more green and circular bioeconomy relevant concept to make it echo to this regional cooperation China now trying to lead it. The third factor I want to mention is economic factor. Even though it's a big one, I do want to highlight it, the market angle and investment angle. Professor Maarit already gave a lot of the details there. What I really want to mention was we need successful business model for the bioeconomy, especially for the forest bioeconomy. I think there are a lot of the successful cases in Europe, but how to make the forest bioeconomy business model also successful here in China, we do need more efforts, and we need to booming the market to favorite the sustainable material products too. For the investment, I do think then the China's investment will continue growing to the other country. So how to make it streamline with circular economy principles is also an interesting factor. Finally, I also would like to highlight the new technologies. The new technologies really change the world. So I think especially for the forest-related sector, some new technologies, for example, the cross-laminated timber will allow the people to booming the green building initiative by using the small plantation as a raw material rather than traditionally the large wood. So, and also all the fiber-based creative novel products like wood fiber-based textile, plastic, all those new technologies can be a very important factor to lead the development. Finally, I just want to mention the COVID-19 pandemic. The world changed. So I think for the green recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic, we think for this green recovery globally, we also need to better use circular bioeconomy principles to make sure that green recovery is really a sustainable and green recovery rather than a fossil fuel based recovery. So we have to adopt the changing world factor we are experiencing and to make this green recovery real green. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Professor Chen. So those are the opening statements by the various speakers. And now we have some time for discussion, and then I'll ask for questions from the floor, from the audience, sorry. I guess already from some of the questions from the audience that they posted on the Q&A, there's one thing I'd really like to hear all your perspectives from, and it's a very practical issue. Obviously, the EU and Europe and the Chinese government and Chinese organizations have been talking about cooperation in broadly this area for a long time, certainly as long as I have been dealing with China, since the early 1990s. There's been discussion of environmental and then green issues. And now we can see that this issue is a very critical one. I mean, this year, last year, all sorts of evidence showing that climate change is not something that people are imagining. It's real, it's happening. We can see evidence for it everywhere. And China has obviously committed a great deal to dealing with this. And yet I read in The Economist this week, that the magazine, that China is still commissioning, you know, kind of fossil fuel, coal kind of power plants, that some of them are being built and that it's actually still using a huge amount of fossil fuels. So that's one example of, you know, a kind of problematic area. So I suppose my question to all of the panelists is, well, we've talked about the framework, we've talked about the dialogue, we've said it's important, but actually, what are we going to do? You know, it's very, very urgent, and clearly we need to do things in a radically different way. The pandemic has made people do public health in a radically different way, more online and much more, you know, kind of accelerated getting vaccines quicker than anyone ever thought. What will we do differently from now that will radically change the way that China and Europe, and possibly, if you could say something about America in all of this too, what will we specifically do in order to accelerate and work more with each other? Maybe if I could ask Maarit, Kallio first of all to sort of, and then I'll go through the other speakers. Thank you.
Well, that's a tough question because it's it mostly starts from the political agenda, and I'm not any kind of expert on that. I think you need to start or continue the negotiations on how to cooperate to tackle these big problems. But
okay, more negotiation. That
yes.
will okay.
Start with those, yes.
Okay. All right, Christine Lang, what do you think we should be immediately doing?
Yes, I think as we here are not the presidents of the respective countries, nations, and European Union, we will probably not be able to do this from top down. So what we could ask for and engage in and work in is a kind of bottom-up approach. And I mentioned in my statement that one of the things that I would think are urgent and should be really done in a good way and in a fast way is building a global platform that really gathers all from an open platform, meaning inclusive to all countries, having experts in there that also, and that is another point, have access to policy advising. We've seen from what we are trying to get this done first from the on the basis of the Global Bioeconomy Summit and then gather this international board. We see at the moment that, of course, we do have Chinese colleagues in there. We do have American colleagues in there, from Latin America, from everywhere, African colleagues. And this really helps to build trust, which is a very important thing, to build understanding, which is the second important thing, because in the beginning it was extremely interesting to share views on what bioeconomy is, what is the importance in the different nations and countries and regions, because that is not similar in all, and what are the difficulties in building markets, for example. And on the other hand, if you have this platform and you have experts in there, and then the second point is have the kind of connection to the policy makers. There are very good examples, and I just name one, that is the policy in Thailand. They had no bioeconomy a few years ago, but then they started, the experts started really to talk to policy, build up white papers and roadmaps. And then a few years ago, they were already with their policymakers and ministers at the Global Bioeconomy Summit in 2018. But this year, just in November, we had the 2020 summit. Thailand was already a partner nation in bioeconomy. So I think this is kind of a success model, to talk to each other, to work in each other. Also, I saw a question in the forum on education. Also, of course, education and training is basis of this, but you have to talk and you have to understand the other part, and then you have a kind of bottom-up approach. That, I think that would be my take on that.
Okay, and just quickly on the Americans, what their role in this is also important, presumably with them rejoining, presumably Paris, then that would be important.
I mean, the US, they do have a bioeconomy roadmap, and with a focus at the moment on, as far as I see it, on biotechnology, synthetic biology, so science-driven focus, and also investing into demonstration platforms and scaling up. So from the scientific basis and colleagues that really drive this, I think there is great openness also to join. And we do have, as I said, American colleagues also in this platform that we already are fostering.
Thank you. Mr. Xiaoqian, so what can we do? Mr. Xiaoqian? Good.
Yeah, he was
我刚才说，我们具体我们已经有很多年我们就合作过了，是关于这个这个保护环境的问题。但是现在好像这个问题越来越严重的，所以现在我们去了就再谈一谈，再说话，我们还能做什么？我们具体能做什么？ 所以我就是想问你，就下一步我们到底欧洲和中国，我们应该用什么政策，我们应该用什么活动，或者我们应该用什么工作，就为了处理这个非常严重的问题，这是比较具体的建议。
实际上刚才呢，我也分享了，就是中欧关于这个循环经济的这个合作的。
So just now, I already shared some works my association did on promoting the circular bioeconomy cooperation between Chinese company and the peers in Europe. I think next year is a 14th five-year plan, fourth year. We already had some thinking there. First of all, from the regulation perspective, we had the legislation on circular economy. So back to 2009, China had the first circular economy promotion regulation. But now I think it's the right time to relook at that legislation, to change it or revise it according to the new changes. So for me, I think the lessons learned in terms of the legislation from Europe side is very helpful for us. Secondly, we're also looking forward to the cooperation in terms of the practical tools. For example, there are methodologies and also standards criteria in Europe in terms of the evaluating the efficiency of the clean production process and also other new technology performance. For us, we think that's an area we are looking forward to the cooperation and learn from the peers in Europe. The third one, we also like to cooperation in terms of developing the principles and the standards and index of the circular economy development. I learned from my UK colleagues. They had a special committee. Sorry, I cannot recall the full name. There was a committee in France too, is working on principles and index. So for me, my association also trying to help develop a principles and index system for measure the China's circular economy development. So I would like to learn more from my peer. Firstly, we think the World Economic Forum is a very useful platform for both and Europe can use to promoting the circular bioeconomy. I proposed to my minister, circular bioeconomy should be listed from the China delegation when they go to the Global Economic Forum, make it an important topic there, and trying to seek the lessons from other countries. So we are planning to have a set events in next Davos World Economic Forum to talk about this. For me, the international cooperation on circular bioeconomy is currently one of the priority area for my association. We would like to invite the expert and also business representative to come to the meetings we organized here. However, unfortunately, because the pandemic, the meeting have to be postponed. But we do have the participants from the embassies, different embassies here. In addition, I think the publicity, the propaganda of the circular bioeconomy concept is very important. Even though the 3C principles already be well recognized here in China, but I don't think the general public, they really fully understood and familiar with what exactly the circular economy can help their daily life. So I hope we also might learn some from peers in Europe on how to better improve the public's awareness on the circular bioeconomy. Above the points I can imagine.
Perhaps I can.
Yes, I'm optimistic for the Europe-China circular bioeconomy cooperation. Even though I agree, there are always not easy journey ahead. But I do believe join the hand together, we can address it.
Okay, and then maybe I could ask to Chen, Professor Chen, her views on this. Thank you.
Right, yeah. So for me, I think, yes, I have to recognize and admit it. The progress in terms of the policy dialogue, even though it makes the progress already in past 10 years or decades, but we still expected more. So I think we have no choice. We should continue the policy dialogue because this is two biggest economy in the world. If there are no continued policy dialogue on this regard, we can hardly imagine what will happen. But I also do believe we need some new incentives and new channels to pushing the circular bioeconomy be further developed, both in China and Europe. For me, I think engaging more from the financial department, for example, can be a useful tool. Recently, there are the booming discussion here in China on the ESG investment, which is a environment, social governance investment. Now, the banking industry here are also interested to talking about this concept and want to use it to their business. So I think as an expert and also the think tanks, we could help to link the green finance properly with the circular bioeconomy and make the people understood only if they can behave well in terms of have a sustainable and good business model. Otherwise, they couldn't able to continue have the financial support. So I think the green finance is an important area, and the banking in Europe obviously did a lot already in that regard. So I do think the cooperation in this green finance is an interesting channel. The second thing I want to mention was for China's side, even though the fiber-based textile and plastic technology already succeed in the laboratory for years, I learned from the experts. However, it couldn't be properly marketized still. Meant we don't able to have a good business model in terms of promoting the forest bioeconomy based products. For example, the wood fiber based textile or plastic, there are no really the big domestic profitable market for those products yet. So I think then to sharing and exchange the successful business model on the forest bioeconomy industry could be very useful to really help the cooperation and make it become a market needs, which can from the bottom up to leverage and help further policy dialogue and evolution. Thank you.
Great. If I could also ask you, Professor Chen, there's a question about forests, you know, kind of China's planting of forests actually from the audience. If I can just ask you, it's about, so let me just find the question. So it's really about what, hold on, let me find this, sorry, I'm just finding the question because it was an important one. Yeah, China has planned to increase forest plantation areas. Where is this going to be? Is it on you know, bare land, or is it replacing natural vegetation? Do you know where actually are the plans to do this you know, this new forest growth? Where is it going to be in China?
Yeah, thank you for the this question. I think I have to explain a little bit more. There is a big national level plantation program newly launched back to 2015. So we call it Chinese Forest Reserve program. It aiming to make the China self-feeding the wood material needs by 2035. So in this program, they have a very aggressive goals was setting by 2035. China will increase at least 20 million cubic meter wood production ability annually. And then if you look into those, look into that plantation new program, you will find that those plantations will not really new builded from the plan, you know, the suitable land which where no timber, where no forest yet. It actually include 3 categories. The first category is new build up, the new afforestation plantation, which only account around 1/3, and the other 1/3 is really like improve the plantation already there, but with the poor timber production capacity by giving more intensive forest management measures. And also there also a final category is also trying to build up the plantation already made in the previous national level plantation program, which already set in a certain area. They might be the wood species actually are supposed to grow up to the 30 years, means that part is really about the large diameter wood. So with that explanation, I do want to correct maybe a misunderstanding or confusion that China is trying to really build all the plantations on the land where there are no forest now. It's not true. the truth was China do allocated the certain areas where there are no forest there yet to be planted in upcoming 20 or 15 years. But at the same time, it also heavily make the effort to improve the forest quality and improve the timber harvest or timber producing capacity in the forest where now already had the forest, but the quality was very poor. So this is basically how it looked like.
Great, thank you very much. And then I have a question about education and research and development, which I think maybe Christine and Maarit might be able to answer. So it's really what has been done to strengthen the EU-China cooperation regarding educational programs and what can be done further. So Christine, do you think that there could be more done in educational programs? I think that was just mentioned by also Mr. Xiaoqian. So yes, what do you think about that?
Definitely, it can be strengthened. I'm sure about this. I mean, we do see a lot of exchange on the bachelor and master students, PhD students coming to Europe to learn and do their, for example, their PhD here. There is already a university alliance, but this is on bioeconomy, but this is, as far as I see, only in Europe. So one way would be very interesting one to extend this alliance between universities and university programs directly into China. That would really help. There is some more on education which is beyond or outside of university, and I think we don't have, we are not allowed to neglect this. This is on training on the job, and because more and more industry will take over and bioeconomy will be part of that. Probably that is something. And third thing I'd like to mention on this, we just heard that public awareness on bioeconomy is something that should be promoted. And I totally agree on that. And just one example from Germany, we do have this year, and due to the COVID-19 crisis, extended into 21. So we have 2 years of what we call science years. And science years are introduced by the Ministry of Education and Research, and they focus on one area. And this year and next year, this science year focuses on bioeconomy. And one aim is to make people understand that bioeconomy is nothing like just a scientific thing, but it's always about products and things that people can really touch and feel and taste and whatever, because bioeconomy is touching our lives if we have textiles or if we have other material, but also in food and other things. And something like a science year could be something that we could maybe export to other countries and maybe also to China.
Thank you. And Maarit, Kallio, do you have anything to say about maybe the educational component?
Not so much actually additional to that. Yeah, there's lots of these master student and PhD exchange students coming from China, and would be nice also to have it a little bit more from Europe to China, that way around also. And this kind of environmental and bioeconomy and thinking, and actually the responsible consuming should be actually taken into all levels of education, starting from the very early young children to so that we learn this new generation to be more responsible in their consumption. But there could be this kind of international bioeconomy and forest policy courses, and actually this international union of forest research organizations could be a good platform or good actor there to help building up those programs.
Thank you. And then I think the final question really will be about the Belt and the Road. There's a question here, I think from James Hewitt, on the Belt and Road Initiative and how its emphasis has been on economic development and growth, but the fact that that sometimes can lead to obviously climate change impact. So now there's the idea of the Belt and Road promoting ecological progress. So the question really is, does the Belt and Road also offer some kind of space for Europe and China to cooperate, as the Belt and Road is so important to China? So maybe I could ask Mr. Zhao Kai about the Belt and Road. Zhao Kai，想想，我们有一个问题关于那个“一带一路”，就说现在“一带一路”到现在主要的目的就是发展经济，但是可能将来那个保护环境也是非常重要的，这个“一带一路”的一部分。你觉得“一带一路”给那个欧洲和中国提供一个机会，在重点的地方就合作，你觉得这个是可能的吗？
这个问题问得非常好啊。这个我们实际上也是
Thank
在
you. This is a very a good question. My association always keep watching the Belt and Road initiative and how it provides the opportunity for the business to practice their circular related principles. And as you all know, the President Xi last year also initiated the Green Belt and Road Alliance in last year. It meant from the China's perspective, the Belt and Road Initiative shouldn't be only focused on economic cooperation, but would rather also provide the opportunity for the country to adopt the green development philosophy. I do think the Europe and China had the cooperation space there. For example, about 3 or 4 years ago, China banned the waste importation from other countries. I noticed then the chain effect by that policy, even for some countries in Europe. However, I also noticed the countries in Europe, some of them already turn those challenges into the cooperation opportunity by negotiating with China to transferring the waste processing technologies to the Chinese company. So I think this clean production technologies, especially the waste processing technologies, for the China side, we eagerly to learn from the Europe, and we also happy to introduce those lessons and what we learned to our cooperation with the countries along the Belt and Road. And I also think that should be a promising area between China and Europe cooperation along the Belt and Road.
I'd like to thank our speakers, Christine Lang, Maarit, Kallio, Mr. Zhao Kai, and Chen Xiaoqian. It's been great to learn from you and to hear your important perspectives. So I'm very, very grateful and on behalf of the organizers. And we look forward to more positive cooperation. Thank you very much. 谢谢大家，谢谢大家。Thank you.
Thank you. 谢谢。
Now back to Janice Bochnik. Yes, I think.
Yes, thank you very much, Kerry. We're now coming towards the end of our webinar, so we can now hand back to our ThinkForest President, Janesh, for some concluding remarks. Janesh, over to you.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, let me try to wrap the debate and conclude. Interesting and useful webinar. I hope you agree. Potential for cooperation with high impact is clearly existing. We have heard that the world after COVID-19 will not be the same again. Unfortunately, it will be the same. We will hopefully just better understand it. Very likely the frequency and the severity of health-related outbreaks, climate-related extreme weather events will in the future increase. So we need to rethink the way we are managing the risks as individuals and collectively, as private companies and public policymakers, locally and globally. We need to collaborate more and build resilient societies and be better prepared. Policymaking and decisions in the future will have to be more science-based. This is one of clear lessons learned on COVID and climate-related challenges. Maybe the public is indeed better understanding the importance of science today, but that does not automatically mean that also policymaking will become more science-based. We have to actively work on that and provide policymakers not only with convincing science, but also with understandable and useful practical solutions. I have always seen and believed that science and research related advantages are in the fact that science is not too high on political radar, which is allowing the right strategic focus and cooperation also in the times when policies are not sufficiently ambitious or some other obstacles exist. And I do believe that with this webinar, we have well seized the opportunity offered. New FE report is a landmark one, being the first of its kind. There has been no systematic assessment and synthesis of the China-Europe forest bioeconomy before, as far at least as I would know. Moreover, it is especially important that the study has been a real in-depth cooperation between European and Chinese experts. Hopefully, this work will help to pave the way also for the future China-Europe forest-based science cooperation. As already mentioned during the opening address, circular bioeconomy should be seen as an instrument to deliver decoupling of economic development from resource use and environmental impacts, and as part of the bigger picture of economic, societal, and cultural transformation needed to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. In Europe, we plan to build our future competitiveness on twin green and digital solutions. Majority do more or less agree about that. But with Black Fridays, we are unfortunately driving just the digital and not also the green part of the transition. Battle over competitive advantage, regardless of the side effects of this battle, and regardless of the costs it creates to our mutual well-being, is a joint suicide mission. Yes, competitiveness is an important development driver, but we need clear understanding of the challenges we have to address together. We need clear rules, and we need an agreed direction of travel. Natural resources, including forests, are the bridge between economy and competitiveness on one hand, and climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and health implications on the other. We have to coordinate better our natural resource management approach. Just an idea on the governance, because you have discussed the governance during webinar. It might be useful if we would consider something like a global convention on natural resource management. Maybe more important than the agreement itself would be the process to reach it. Circular bioeconomy, the use of biomass, would certainly be an important topic to be addressed in such a process. I'm already quite active to promote this idea inside the UN International Resource Panel and also inside the European Commission. If this idea would be jointly promoted by China and Europe to global players, which do well understand the importance of responsible resource management, it could become a powerful system change trigger. Dear friends, production and consumption systems today are based on the logic of consumerism, fueled by the quantity-driven profits and growth measured by the GDP. And maybe GDP could be best explained by saying that one will not reach the goal by walking faster, if walking in the wrong direction. So we have to fix a broken compass. Markets are core mechanism for the interaction among economic actors, producers and consumers. Production, financial capital, it's overvalued and over-rewarded. Labor capital, it's undervalued and under-rewarded. And natural capital, it's unfortunately in many cases not valued at all. This cannot lead to economic, social, and environmental balance. Signals to economic actors should change. Currently, there is an absurd situation on the markets that producers are rewarded with higher incomes and profits if they destroy natural capital and environment, and consumers are penalized with higher prices if they are willing to take care for the public interest, protecting environment and health. We are trying to rebalance this by protecting public interest through regulation, public funding, and other initiatives. But all in all, we just make market players rather confused. There is a lot of lobbying and also a lot of power struggles. And unfortunately, in many cases, it is not knowledge which is lacking, but rather the necessary level of cooperation and real, sincere care for public interests. This webinar, it's an excellent example of what one should consider as important and how these important questions should be approached and addressed. It is, on one hand, building the necessary trust among partners in the area of forest and their role in developing a circular bioeconomy potential. And it is, on the other hand, building also the necessary trust among partners for a sincere cooperation and partnership. European Union is very much committed to multilateralism. Experiences we have learned through decades of cooperation are enough convincing. And China's obvious importance should remind us all that fruitful and balanced coexistence should be the aim of European-China relations, also economic and also in circular bioeconomy field. The topic we discussed today, it's important, not an easy one. Some important views and answers were provided, but certainly not all. So yes, the dialogue among partners should continue, hopefully leading us also to some concrete answers and solutions. We need them, and we owe them to the future we want. Thank you for joining us today. Take care and all the best. And back to you, Rach.
Thank you very much to you, Janusz, and thank you once again to all our speakers and panelists today, as well as to you, the audience, for joining us. We look forward to welcoming you again to another ThinkForest event in 2021. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.